What is up, everybody, and welcome back to another excellent episode of the Tight Lines Podcast. In this week's episode, we are doing another random fishing topics episode. I have nothing prepared for you guys or written down besides a list of 25 random topics presented to me by ChatGPT. So we're going to see what it came up with, and we're just going to talk about them and see what comes to mind. I'll discuss my thoughts on that topic, if there's recommendations to give, and have all sorts of fun. Pretty simple, right? I'd hope so. So without any further rambling, let's get into it. Welcome to the Tight Lines Podcast, your destination for anything fishing. Now here's your host, Tyler Plackey. Alrighty, so like we talked about in the introduction, we have 25 topics here. Again, I have nothing prepared besides the list. I literally have a list of 25 topics, and we're just going to talk about them as much as I can for you guys. So, we're going to get right into it. Number 1, the best rod action for Texas-rigged soft plastics. For me, that's a fast rod. You want a fast, sensitive tip, and you want to be able to have a little backbone and some oomph behind it when you set your hook to make sure that, especially if it's Texas-rigged, you've got that hook point buried. You want to be able to get that hook point out of the plastic and up into the fish's mouth. If you have a moderate action rod, there might be too much give, and you might not be able to bury that hook point as much. Now going into the power of the rod, I know this isn't talked about in the question, but we're going to bounce off it. That just solely depends on what I'm throwing. If I'm throwing a trick worm that's Texas rigged, I have a medium or a medium light on a spinning rod. If I'm throwing a 6-inch Senko with 3/8 ounce bullet weight on the front of it, I've probably got a medium heavy casting rod, right? But going back to action, it's going to be a fast action rod tip. Number 2, spinnerbait versus chatterbait in muddy water. Man, for me, this one, I immediately think spinnerbait, but I also think big Colorado blade. I'm thinking big thump. I feel like I can slow roll that a little bit better, give the fish time to find it more often. With a chatterbait, I feel like I have more of a sense to burn the chatterbait, fish a little bit quicker. I don't like to slow it down a ton, especially when I'm like ripping through grass. So for me, in muddy water, my mind goes towards a spinnerbait, especially like a gold Colorado blade, which really gives a nice big thump and a big womp, womp, womp kind of sound. And then also throwing a big paddle tail on the back of that spinnerbait, just a nice big target for the fish to be able to find. So yeah, spinnerbait. Number 3, how does barometric pressure affect largemouth bass? I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I'm really not sure. I know there's a ton of studies out there on how barometric pressure affects largemouth bass. I would think that based on my experience that higher barometric pressure is, good for the fish. When there's that high pressure, that means something is happening in the atmosphere and the fish can feel that, and so they feel like they need to go eat. Low pressure, I feel like, that's when you typically have sunny skies, I feel like. Maybe I'm backwards on that. But I feel like sunny skies, a really high sky, that's when you're having bad days out on the water. So that's kind of all I know about barometric pressure and largemouth bass. If you guys know more, please feel free to comment about it. Would love to hear your thoughts. Bank fishing strategies for pressured lakes. Okay, now we're getting into my cup of tea here, because as you guys know, that's how I fish. I bank fish, and obviously I live in central Indiana, so everything around here is pressured. So for me, my first thought is I'm trying to match the hatch, right? So trying to figure out what is the main forage in that body of water. Is it shad? Is it bluegill? Is it craws? You know what I mean? Is it other bass? But try and figure out what the main forage is. You do that by kind of looking around, kind of look into the water. That's why you've got polarized sunglasses. But from there, the big key is to just try and not do too much, right? Just try and find simple techniques that work. A lot of times people overthink, in my opinion. They think they get to a pressured lake, and so they have to throw some absolutely, just obtuse, just crazy looking bait, right? Some, chatterbait with a spinnerbait donkey rigged on the back of it that's chartreuse and fire tiger. And that's not always what works. Sometimes for me in a pressured lake, it's a very simple squirrel crankbait that's going to catch the nice fish. It's going to be, a soft zoom fluke. We talked about that, a couple episodes ago about the greatness of the zoom fluke. Go check that one out. But also try and go find the spots where, it's kind of hard to get to. You have to climb around some trees a bit and really, go up and down hills, but find the places that people don't just stand, right? If you walk down the path that's right at the entrance and stand where everyone else stood, guess what? That's where everyone stands to fish. So that's where the fish are like, oh, okay, I'm ready for this, right? So for me, I'm looking for the places that are harder to get to. Might be a bit of a walk, but look for those places that are tough to get to. Look for, for ledges, look for drop offs, look for grass, look for laydowns, just kind of anything you can find within the lake that's a little bit different that a bass might relate to. And again, just keep it simple and just try and match the hatch. A fish is, largemouth bass are very opportunistic feeders, right? So when they see the ability to have a meal, they're going to take it if they're truly hungry. If they're not hungry, if they're not gonna bite. It doesn't matter how good your presentation looks. If they don't want to bite it, they're not going to. So that is bank fishing strategies for pressured lakes. Number 5, best colors for crankbaits in stained water. Here I want something that has some sort of contrast with itself. So maybe like a chrome and a black, or a chartreuse and a red, or yeah, just something like that. It's real simple. Something that's gonna flash, something that's gonna thump a little bit, but also something where it's going to have contrast with what's around it, so that it stands out a bit, especially in the stained water. Also, you have to be able to make sure that you're getting it near fish so that fish can see it, so understand where you are in the water column. Number 6, finesse fishing when the bite is tough. For this, I just, Midwest guy, I'm going to downsize. I'm going to go simple. So here I'm thinking about a spinning rod. I've got my medium light rod that I take with me everywhere I go. And I am thinking about trick worms. I'm thinking about Ned rigs. And that's really about it, honestly. Maybe small paddle tails. Looking at something like a big jaw sheet, swim bait. Looking at something like a very, like a 3-inch Kitech, 3.5-inch Kitech. Looking at small jigs. But honestly, when the bite's really tough, there's two options. You can either go real small or real big. And what that does for you is it makes you stand out. If you're keeping that same medium size that everything else, all the forage is, I understand this is what we were just talking about, the pressured lakes, it's kind of different, but there's times where you want to be the one to stand out as well. Um, there's times that you match and there's times that you stand out. And if matching the hatch isn't working, maybe don't change your color. Don't go super crazy in color, but change your size. If you're throwing a 4-inch paddle tail and it's not working, downsize to a 2-inch or a 3-inch, or maybe upsize to a 6-inch paddle tail. And you never know. Maybe they'll see that, again, as we just talked about, bass are opportunistic feeders. And so if they see this giant, 8-inch paddle tail just moseying on by, just wobble, wobble, wobble right past their face, not with, not a care in the world, that bass is going to think, oh man, that is a huge meal. It's super easy. It's right in front of me. I'm going to go eat that. So that's just one thing to think about. So, and then finesse fishing, and we're going back to the Ned rig. We are going back to the Texas rigged worm, going to flukes even. Just something simple, not trying to do too much, just trying to figure out where the fish are and just get the bait in front of the fish's face. As we've talked about already this episode, if a fish wants to eat, it's going to eat. If it doesn't want to eat, it's not going to eat. You can't convince a fish to eat if it doesn't want to. Number 7, topwater frogs, walking versus popping. Me personally, I'm not a huge frog fisherman. Most of my frogs are just walking compared to popping frogs. I feel like if I want something that's going to pop, I'm just going to get a popper. I feel like the frog, I want the nice, more hydrodynamic body. I want to be able to pull it through the water column. And I want something that's less likely to get stuck on things. I feel like the cupped mouth has a tendency to pick up scum, especially if you're going over lily pads or, high grassy areas. So I like a normal walking style frog compared to a popping style. Number 8 is choosing the right line. Fluorocarbon versus braid versus mono. So for me, I use all three. It just kind of depends. Fluorocarbon I use on my jerkbait and crankbait setup. I have 12 pound, either 10 or 12 pound Cigar Basics fluorocarbon on there. Real simple stuff, real cheap, does the trick. Braid for me is what I'm going to throw on the majority of my setups, just because it's so easy to use. You can always tie a leader on if you need to. Mono is one of those where I've got it on one of my setups and I've just kept it on there because it's just a really good, well broken in monofilament's really nice to have. And it's broken in, it works really well, so I'm not going to change it right now. But overall, I'm going to choose braid in like 98% of my setups. Even if the water is clear, that's when you just tie a fluoro leader, tie about a foot or two, 1 to 3 foot fluoro leader, and you're fine. And it doesn't matter. Just tie a double uni knot, and you're good to go. So for me, like I said, most of the time braid, the rest of the time fluoro. Occasionally I'll throw mono, but mostly braid, just because you can go down in weight if you need to if you don't want super thick braid. Number 9, pre-spawn bass movement patterns. So pre-spawn bass are starting to move out of the deep areas of the lake, and they're starting to move up more shallow, right? They're trying to move up somewhere where they can build a bed where it's safe for them and where they can obviously mate and spawn, right? That's what spawning is. That's bass are making new bass. That's the birds and the bees, or the bass and the bluegill, or whatever you want to call it, right? But fish are moving up. They're transitioning out of the deep water into the more shallow water. They're kind of setting up on ledges and drop offs. And at this point, they're also starting to, they're getting a little bit aggressive. They're looking for food. They know they need to fatten up for the spawn period. So this is when you can really just go out and throw a lot of just paddle tails and crankbaits and jerkbaits and just throw a bunch of stuff that moves, and you're going to get a ton of bites. It's a ton of fun. Number 10, skipping docks with bait casting gear. I'm gonna be honest, I'm not great at skipping with bait casting gear. I can actually skip pretty well with my spinning gear, which I mean I know most people can. But if I'm gonna be skipping, usually I'm skipping with my spinning gear, and I'm also just skipping something like a fluke or a Texas rig. I don't skip a chatterbait, I don't skip a spinnerbait. If you really need something under there, you can try and flip a jig up under there. But I also haven't had a ton of experience or a ton of time where I've needed to really skip dock, so it hasn't become an issue for me because I don't fish from a boat or a kayak. I bank fish, and so there's not a lot of time where I'm flipping underneath the dock. Number 11 is the fall transition, following bait fish versus structure. For me, I'm kind of doing both. So in the fall transition, I am obviously trying to mimic the bait fish. Again, going back to what we were talking about, the pressured lakes, figure out what is the forage there, right? What are the bass eating? And then for me, I'm going to go find where the bass are hiding and fish. So if that's underneath the dock, if that's around a tree or a laydown or wherever it might be, I think it's not a versus. I think truly in the fall transition, it's both. These fish are looking for a reason to eat. They want to eat. They're trying to fatten up before winter. Very similar to pre-spawn time. They're trying to get big and fat, so give them something to eat. It's real simple. Don't overthink it. It's the old KISS principle, guys. You ever heard of that? It's keep it simple, stupid. The old KISS principle, real basic. Just match the hatch and throw it where the fish are. Smallmouth versus numbers 12. Smallmouth versus largemouth feeding behavior. This is one that I don't know a ton about. I know that smallmouth are typically more aggressive when they go eat. They hit a lot harder. That's why a lot of times people that fish smallmouth, a couple reasons, but one of the reasons is why they'll fish treble hooks. Smallmouth like to swipe more than inhale, but obviously because their mouths are smaller, so they can't just open up and eat whatever they want like a largemouth. So I like to swipe, which is the reason why you're throwing a treble hook. Smallmouth love to hit top water. They'll bite jigs. They'll bite anything that a largemouth will as well. You have to be cautious and just kind of understand, hey, it's a smaller mouth. So if you're running, a single EWG, maybe you don't need a 5/0 hook. Maybe you need a 3/0 hook. You can run as big a treble hooks as you want, and that fish will come swipe at it and catch itself anyways. Moving on to number 13, electronics versus instinct. I can honestly tell you guys that I have never once fished a boat with electronics. And when I say that, I've been on a single guide trip where the guy used, it was a catfish guide trip that we did. My buddies and I did the last spring, and all he used was side imaging as we were going down the river. Other than that, he had side imaging. I guess he'd have down imaging just to, figure out depth, obviously, with a fish finder. But I've never once used anything like forward-facing sonar or 360 or live scope or anything like that. For me, it's just about going on fishing and having fun. Obviously, when I make my fishing YouTube videos that you guys have seen, obviously, I want to be putting on a little bit of a show. I want you guys to see the fish. But I also don't fish in a situation where I can even use electronics. Obviously, I don't have forward-facing sonar on the bank because I don't have a boat and I don't have a kayak. So it's just one of those where I go on fish, and you got to make changes as you see them. If you're throwing a jerkbait and you can see that some fish are chasing after it but not committing to it, or you're getting some nibbles and no one's taking it, change the color, or change the size, right? If you're throwing a 110 junior and they're kind of nibbling after it, follow it up with a normal sized 110, and maybe all of a sudden, or a Rapalo Husky Jerk 130, get something big in there, and all of a sudden, like, holy crap, there's a big meal. I could really commit to that. So yeah, that's electronics first instinct. Just kind of figure out what's going on. I don't think electronics are truly the cheat code that everyone thinks they are. I think they're really good for finding suspended fish, but honestly, I don't, I don't think forward-facing sonar will make a bad fisherman great. I think it'll just make a great fisherman better, if that makes sense. Moving on to number 14, how to fish grass lines effectively. First thing I think about is going to be bait. For me with grass lines, I'm thinking lipless crankbaits, and I'm thinking chatterbaits, stuff that you can rip in and out of the grass. I am fishing typically if there's a grass line, I'm going to throw it, I'm going to bring it through the grass and then rip the bait out. And when that bait rips out the front or the back or whichever, the side, wherever it is, when the bait rips out of the grass and back into the open water, that's oftentimes when you'll get bit. So just kind of, you can work crankbaits along the side if you want and try and get a fish to come out that's opportunistic. For that, that's typically when I'm throwing, a little bit slower, retrieving a bit slower. So if I'm fishing along, parallel with it rather than through it, I'm gonna go slower. If I'm fishing through it, I'm gonna fish faster. Number 15 here is going to be. Oh, sorry guys, I had to pause it because I had to sneeze. So, but number 15 is going to be swim baits for bass under 5 pounds. Worth it or not? Yeah, 100% worth it. You will get. I've gone up and fished. I was kayak fishing this past spring, and we were up on a private pond, and I had £1.5 largemouth eating 6-inch coal shads. That is a 1.25 to 1.5 ounce bait. I swim baits for any size bass. Again, it's bass who can eat it. And now this might be talking about like big swim baits and big glide baits, which is where I'm also kind of taking this. Again, throw it. The fish might eat it. You never know. Make adjustments based on what you're noticing. But yeah, I will always throw swim baits. Swim baits are about my favorite thing to fish. Number 16, night fishing for bass. Myths and realities. So one of the big myths in night fishing is that you have to have a bunch of sound and a bunch of flash and make a big commotion. And that's really not the truth. The reality to night fishing is bass eat at night regardless. I have caught nighttime bass on Ned rigs, guys. I'm not kidding. I've flipped docks with Ned rigs, and had a great time and caught a ton of bass. Were they the biggest? No, but I was catching fish. I've also had great luck on spinnerbaits. I've had great luck on chatterbaits. But remember, bass are used to eating at night. Bass, they eat during the day, they eat during the night. You don't, at night, bluegill and shad don't suddenly, start vibrating and become humongous. They're just as small and sneaky as always. Don't overthink it. Just keep it simple. Number 17, best terminal tackle upgrades that actually matter. Okay, so for me, I'm going to start with hooks. As long as you're not buying like the cheapest, crappiest hooks, I think you're okay. Keep a hook sharpener with you to make sure that that point doesn't get bent over. But a lot of the hooks that I use are the H2OX brand from Academy. They're cheap, they're good, they come in a variety of sizes. This past winter, I got some good deals on some BKK hooks, which will be nice. Some ultra points, so those will be really nice to start going in. If you are, if we're getting into the sense of catfishing, having good swivels, obviously, you want to have really good swivels. Or if you're bass fishing and you're using a swivel, have good quality swivels, spend the money, get a nice Pro swivel, get a nice, whatever brand swivel you like, but don't buy the 100 pack for $2 off Temu, because I promise you those things are going to break, and then you're just going to lose your $8 and $10 baits. Spend the money. I'm not saying you need a 230-pound test swivel, but go out and get a 20-pound test. It should match your main line, in my opinion. Number 18 is kayak bass fishing setup essentials. For me, let's go back to 17. One last thing I forgot to talk about is going to be tungsten. I have not really dabbled into the world of tungsten. I have some tungsten weights that I got, but haven't really dabbled into fishing with them yet compared to lead weights. Mostly because most of the time when I would be using anything that would require a weight, I'm fishing weightless anyways. I fish mostly weightless Texas rigs. My water's not deep enough. I don't feel the need to really, punch down through grass. I don't have huge, heavy grass mats here like they do down south. So not really, don't know the difference between tungsten and lead for usability on my end. I know a lot of other people say, I know a lot of people swear by tungsten over lead. They say it's life changing, it's Pandora's box, but for me, not sure yet. I will report back when I have more information for you. Number 18, kayak bass fishing setup essentials. For me, as someone who's only fished one time out of a kayak in my life, I want to tell you that, keep in mind this was out of a pond and it wasn't my kayak, I was borrowing it. For me, a couple essentials would be one, a sit on top kayak with a nice seat. We fished out of kayaks. They were like they weren't like they were sit on tops, but it was like just the pads with like the backing didn't actually have like the chair you sat in. And I'll tell you what, after about 45 minutes, I was hurting. And about 3 or 4 hours into fishing, I was like, I'm done. I was exhausted. My back hurt. My legs hurt. Everything was sore. So get a nice sit on top kayak. The only other thing I would say is if you're going to be out fishing larger bodies of water, so I'm talking, larger, a little bit bigger lakes and rivers, get a pedal drive instead of a paddle. Keep a paddle with you, obviously, but get a pedal drive. I feel like that's going to be just a lot more fun. You're going to get to have a lot longer day. It's a lot easier to fish when you're not trying to paddle at the same time. Number 19, cold front fishing adjustments. So for me, the one thing to think about with these cold fronts is typically within the same 24 hours of a cold front. If it's been, let's say, 70 out and a cold front comes through and it's 35, that water temperature isn't plummeting. It's going to go down a bit, but it's not plummeting. So I don't make humongous changes. I'll slow it down a bit. But again, just go out and figure out what's going on in your water because every waterway is different. XYZ river might, when a cold front comes through, fish might dart underneath logs and hide there and not eat for a week. Where compared to the pond in my backyard, a cold front comes through and they think, oh crap, winter's coming, I need to fatten up, and then all of a sudden they're ready to go. So just kind of figure out what's going on, and go from there. Number 20, matching the hatch versus reaction strikes. Um, for me, obviously you have to match the hatch in some way. I'm not saying it has to be identical. I understand there's like the Berkeley, HD colors that they do. Those have done really well for me in the past. I've had fun with those. But just more or less for me, it's about getting a similar color and a similar size. And then from there, just again, if a fish wants to eat, it's going to eat. So, go out there. If you can throw a little flash on it, if you're throwing a spinnerbait, if you're throwing a chatterbait, if you're throwing a blade bait, whatever it might, a jerk bait, but just finding ways to get fish to, commit to what's there in front of them and give them something that if they're wanting to eat, they can't resist eating. Number 21 is river bass fishing versus lake bass fishing. I've had a ton more success on lakes and ponds than I have rivers. It's been a lot more fun. I truly don't understand rivers. Rivers are just difficult in my opinion. Um, I love lake bass fishing. They're easier to figure out. You don't have to worry about current. Rivers can get very dangerous very quickly. Again, we're talking about current and things that are in the water and always, an ever-changing bottom compared to a lake where, everything's pretty similar most of the year round. Number 22, how often to retie and why it matters. So every time I catch fish, I'll check my line, and just see what the knot looks like, what the line looks like. If it's starting to fray, if there's little, nicks and marks in it, then yeah, I'll cut and retie. But if it looks fine, it looks fine. I don't overthink it. Don't cut and retie every fish. Obviously, if you're a pro angler and you got $300,000 on the line and you can manage to burn through $100 worth of line in a weekend by cutting and retying, go for it. But for me and what I do, make sure you're tying good knots. Check your line once you're done. Make sure nothing's fraying. If you're tying leaders, go up and check your leader knot, and then check through your main line. When you're reeling in, if you got braid, check your braid as you're reeling it in. Kind of watch it. You can kind of, if it's fraying, you can usually see it and tell as it's coming in. But just kind of keep an eye on it. Number 23, we got this one and then two more. Sun angle and bass positioning. So I truly believe that in the morning, fish will line up on the west end of the water. And that is because that's where the sun is going to hit first thing. The sun rises in the east, so it's going to hit that west end first because of trees and buildings and houses that are in the way blocking the east end. As the sun gets higher and higher, the fish will kind of move more central and they'll kind of follow underneath that sun ray. But primarily in the morning until, probably 2 or 3 in the afternoon, fish are going to set up on that west end. As it gets to afternoon and evening and into nighttime, fish are going to move over towards the east end of the pond because as the sun sets in the west, the sun is shining on the east end, and that's where the water is going to be the warmest. They're going to set up on rocks. They're going to set up on gravel. They're going to set up on anywhere that they can find that's going to keep them warm and safe and, opportunistic to find fish. Just it's all about finding where the fish are. Go out and make your adjustments. If you've got a pond, you can walk the pond 4 or 5 times. If you've got a lake, just kind of do some paddling around and figure out what's what in the world and go from there. Number 24, confidence baits in the psychology of fishing. This is humongous in my opinion. I have baits that I know catch fish that I refuse to throw because I can't seem to figure them out. That is why, for me, I've listened to the Tackle Talk podcast, and one of the New Year's resolutions he always talks about is find a new bait to love. And for me this past year, that was Ned rigs. I hated Ned rigs. I couldn't figure them out. It seemed like fish wouldn't bite them. Learned to love the Ned rig. This year, for me, it's going to be the normal jig. I don't throw jigs. I really don't. I throw swim jigs. I throw bladed jigs. But I don't throw traditional, hop and drag the bottom jigs. I throw a lot of swimming baits and stuff like that. If I'm throwing anything that's a jig resemblance, I'm throwing trick worms and craws and Texas rigs. So for me, I'm going to fish the things I'm confident in. I've learned to love the jerk bait recently too, but I'm really, really going to force myself to love the jig, mostly because I've spent a lot of money on jigs this winter, getting some decent jigs put together. So now I'm going to go out and I'm going to learn to love the jig because obviously it catches fish. People catch fish on jigs every day. They win hundreds of thousands of dollars in tournaments on them. It's tried and true. It works. So for me, it's you got to just build that confidence. So I truly do think though that when you're confident in a bait, you're gonna fish it better. You're gonna put it in spots where it's gonna catch fish compared to just chucking it out in the open. So yeah, 25, our final topic of the day: catch and release best practices for bass. I am not one to really hop on the soapbox about catch and release versus eating. My only stance here that I'm going to make is if you're in small local ponds that everyone else fishes out of and you're catching the big dogs out of them, put them back, guys. Let someone else catch them. You don't need to eat those. If you're in an apartment complex and you're fishing the ponds, there's absolutely no reason to keep those fish. It's a small waterway. Those fish aren't going to regrow that quick. But for me, if you're out in the river, if you're out in the big lakes, if you're in the ocean, wherever you're fishing, if you catch fish that are legal to keep the fish. I love eating fish. Fish taste great. I love, I've eaten bluegill growing up. Bluegill are great. I love eating bass. Just just don't take from others, if that makes sense. If it's in a situation where taking the fish is going to be harmful to the environment, don't take the fish. Now, if you gut hook a fish and it's gonna die, and you thought about taking it home to eat it, take it home and eat it. If you're gonna be catching and releasing, be nice to the fish. Be gentle on the fish. Hold it properly, if it's a bass, hold it upright or support its belly if you're holding it sideways. Don't break its jaw. Don't try and, hold it open at a weird diagonal angle to make the fish look bigger. Don't hurt the fish, guys. Remember, these fish have to be alive for us to catch them. They have to be healthy for us to catch them. If they're not, we don't get to go fishing for them. We don't want to hurt our one true resource, which is our fish. All right, everybody. That is this week's episode for you all. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed the episode. I had a ton of fun with this. I love these kind of topics where honestly, like I said, I had no idea what to talk about. I had no idea what I was going to say until I got to the actual questions. So it was a ton of fun for me. And like I said, hopefully you guys have enjoyed it. And if you have, please be sure to drop us a positive review on whatever podcast platform you're tuning in with. That could be a 5-star review, a written review, a thumb up, a thumb down, hopefully a thumb up though. We are on Apple Podcasts, we're on Spotify, iHeartRadio, YouTube, and Amazon Podcasts. Also be sure to check out my Instagram and my TikTok, which are Tyler Plackey Fishing. And if you're not listening to this on YouTube, check out my YouTube also, Tyler Plackey Fishing. They all three have the same logo, all super easy to find. But on there you can see what I've been up to. You can DM me suggestions for the show, ask questions for the tackle box, or just chat with me. Have some really cool videos coming up for YouTube soon for you guys. Some awesome videos in the past to go back and check out if you haven't watched them yet. My Instagram is super up to date. Everything happens on Instagram before anywhere else. If you really want to know what's going on in the world, go to my Instagram. I update that almost daily. Funny enough, about 20 minutes before I started recording this, I made a video and posted on my Instagram. It's also on my YouTube Shorts, but it's a video on my Instagram. So if you guys want to check it out, check that out too. But thank you all so much for listening every week and dedicating your time to the show. I really do appreciate your support. The show is starting to grow bit by bit, little by little, every week. Obviously, we're not raking in 100,000 views, but it's enough that obviously this is fun for me, and I love doing the show, and hopefully you guys do too. But yeah, thank you guys so much for all of your support every week. Tuning in, it really does help the show. Share with your friends, post on social media, upvote it, comment, anything that helps the algorithm is truly appreciated. So again, thank you guys so much, and until next time, tight lines, y'all.